Blog Talk Radio.
Tell me the truth. Are you not mesmerized? Are chills not going up and down your skinny little spine?
What do you do all day? Not a goddamn thing. When was the last thing you did anything over there at that studio? Never.
Specifically,
you never do a goddamn thing but sit around and bitch about women's genitalia. You guys are disgusting and need to get off the radio. Jake, you're fired.
Look in my eyes. What do you see? Come the personality. I know your anger.
Hello and welcome. Well, that was a weak fade right there. Hello and welcome to the latest installment of the Jake Pentland Show. I am excited, as always, but particularly excited today because I will be joined later. She is not called in just yet, by the great Sandra Bernhard. So we're excited. This is a big coup for us. I normally don't get starstruck, obviously, but I do find myself a little bit nervous today and slightly intimidated. Although I think I've been offending Sandra on Twitter, like many people, for a long time. But Twitter's a different animal. This is very, very cool that she's going to call in. But with that said, say hello, Jen.
Hello. I'm more nervous than you are.
Yeah, it's funny. It's so, like, you know. Oh, and Eli. Sorry, Eli. Say hello, of course.
Hey, Coach.
I almost muted Eli. He was getting his Tourette's stuff out before the show, and I hope he didn't. I hope nobody heard.
I hope it's out.
Yeah, good old Eli. I won't go into what was said, but I do love Eli dearly. And let's get to it. Sandra, are you there?
I'm here.
I am so
Yay.
pleased that you called into the show. Let me just say from the start.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Hi, Sandra.
Hi, Jen. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. It's a gorgeous day in New York, and, you know, it's just mellow and just hanging around looking at all of the tweets coming in about the show today.
It's exciting, yeah.
Very excited, all ginned up.
I didn't realize, I have a confession, I had assumed I was following you this whole time because I see your tweets. So I went to send you a private message today, and I realized I don't follow you on Twitter.
Well, that is shocking.
Isn't that? And you have followed me.
I'm going to hang up right now.
I know.
I'm deeply devastated.
Yeah, because my follow is a big deal on Twitter, let me tell you. I bring the Twitter
but now you will, and now you'll see all the, you know, the brilliance spewing forward.
Well, that's what I've actually been doing this morning is going back and refreshing myself with your genius.
I love you've been refreshing yourself, like just taking some of my genius into the shower and, like, scrubbing it.
It wouldn't be the first time.
I've always been a fan, but I just watched the clip. I bounce around. I apologize. I'm just excited. But I watched the clip.
We all do. Don't worry, honey.
Okay,
you know that. That's how we are.
Of the Jodie Foster Director Academy, and I almost peed my pants laughing. I don't know what year that's from.
What was it?
You were, the clip title is "Comedy is so self-indulgent," and you were saying you were done with acting and comedy and getting into directing, and then you went to the Jodie Foster School of Directing, where you learned to break down a camera and set up lights. It was hysterical.
What is that? You know, sometimes I amaze myself because people will say, "What about that?" and I don't even remember saying anything like that because sometimes when I'm on stage, I kind of go off on these tangents, and they were like one-offs, and I never say it again. And then people will say, "Hey, what about like this?" And I'm like, "The Jodie Foster School of Directing, that's very funny." And then I'm like, "Oh, wait, that was me." Good to know that once in a while I even like delight myself.
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, let's get right into it. I mean, you obviously prepare stand-up. I mean, you don't just go up there and do straight one-offs.
No, of course, yes, I do. I always have like, you know, a whole set that I can fall back on. But then often in the middle of it, you know, depending on what's going on and how the audience is, you know, you've been around it long enough, you know, if there's a great crowd and you're really connecting and you feel free to talk about anything, you'll just go off, and then you go off book, but you always have a place to come back to. So that's, you know, it's a safety net.
I guess. I mean, I fancy myself that I do that way, but the truth is I completely suck at this. I'll have like a like you said, a safety net. And then I'll think, I'm just going to go off here for a sentence or two. And then I find I've been talking for like a half hour straight, and then I'm getting all these notes to shut up from all the other people on the show. How do you, is that just a craft that you've worked out just by being on stage so much, or is it just something innate, knowing when to shut up, I guess I'm saying?
I think it's a combination, and I also think you sometimes I'll go off on these really intense, funny, free, stream of consciousness, free form things, and then, when I'm I feel myself winding down, like I've kind of played it out, and then I'll just kind of go back to it again, and you kind of tire yourself out too. It's like a dog chasing its tail. The dog will just lay down again. So it's all that. It's really a combination, but it's keeping your ear to the ground and hearing the drum beat.
What happens on those times? Because this is more my experience. On the times where, even if it's prepared or not prepared, when it's just not working, do you get that horrible feeling like you just want to jump out the window, or do you work through it? How do you deal with, I guess, basically bombing? I don't know if it's ever happened to you. I assume it happened to everybody.
It happened a lot more back in the day when I was starting out and doing strictly comedy. But now that I, usually have a band with me and I sing, it's nice because I can fall back on a song and kind of go out of the moment. But it doesn't happen often. Sometimes if I'll try a new market, like a smaller market somewhere where people are like not completely hip to what I do, and they're kind of just, I don't even think it's necessarily that they're not enjoying it. They just don't get the rhythm, or they've never seen me live. It's a little harder work. I have to kind of pull it out of them. But it's good because it keeps you on your toes, and you never get complacent that way.
And like you said, you mentioned you sing. Of course, everyone knows that you act and comedy and all these things. What is it? Do you enjoy them all equally, or do you have a preference? If you could only pick one, basically, which would you do?
Well, I'd have to say that if I only had my choice of one, it would definitely be performing live.
Right.
Because it's just, and there's nothing else like it. And you can be on a movie set or on, filming a 4-camera, series and all the rest of it, but there's so much stop and start in that, and there's like no immediate feedback or response from an audience. So just in terms of sheer adrenaline and excitement, I think live performing is definitely on the top of the list.
And did you always know, I talked to my mother about this, of course, and she always knew. She always knew by the time she was 3. You always knew, right?
Yeah, my first conscious, memory of it was when I was 5, actually talking to a family friend, and she asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. I said a comedian. And she laughed and thought it was so adorable, but I did know, and that was, I just came in knowing it, and I have 3 older brothers, and they were like a captive audience, so I was always singing and doing my little routines, and they just thought I think they just thought I was just dropped from a spaceship or something, because I was just so different than everybody else.
Well, that's one of the things I don't want to get too in depth. I know you're here to promote a show and all, but I'm fascinated by you. I have this theory, again, growing up the child of a comedian, and this again is no insult to my mother, but I find that people, myself included, that have that sort of always knowing, always wanting to be a comedian, I've always sort of questioned, is that honestly innate, or do you think that's something that happened early on, some environmental thing, maybe you just noticed something? A lot of times comics are screwed up people. We all know that. I'm not saying all of them. But, how much of it do you really think, like you really were dropped from another planet and it's innate and that's just your personality, and how much was just your upbringing? I'm not familiar with your upbringing, but you know the question.
I don't think it was my upbringing. I think that a lot of people in my family were writers, especially on my mom's side. Like probably half the people in my family write. A lot of my family are out in LA writing on TV shows, and cousins, and so I think it's kind of in my DNA. And my grandmother, who came over from Russia when she was young, she was really a frustrated performer, so I think that was part of it. There were a lot of big personalities in my family. All both my grandmothers had big personalities, and my mother was a painter and an abstract artist. She's not doing it anymore, but so there was a lot of influence artistically from every angle in growing up in my life. So I think that that was kind of in my DNA. I was surrounded by it, and I think that it's just second nature for me.
I think that's. you know, I don't know how much you follow me on Twitter or not, or
I do. I follow you a lot.
Okay. So I talk a lot now about what I call, you know, I don't know what I call it anymore. Actually, I've changed it so many times. I call it the justification. I call it the narcissist movement. But there are a lot of kids being raised now where, you know, they're basically told this, like, that thing you had or my mother had, that performance thing, that was kind of rare back in that day, from what I understand. And now it's rare to find a kid that doesn't want to be famous or perform.
That's right.
And
here's the problem. They want to be famous. They don't want to do the work, and they really don't have anything to say. And there's no sort of a strong pulse in their arm that's pushing them into it. I couldn't have done, and your mom and I couldn't have done anything else, and we paid, you know, tremendous price along the way for doing it. You know, being women in the early years of you know, I know this is probably like pushing it, but you know, a male-dominated world, and you know, it wasn't easy, but it just isn't easy to get up and do stand-up no matter who you are, a man or a woman. So I think now kids don't understand the amount of passion and dedication it takes to do anything from, you know, from designing clothes to performing to writing songs to directing a movie, whatever artistic leaning you have. You can't just like pick up a digital camera and make a movie and that's just post it and that's the work. I mean, no, it isn't the work, because it's a combination of living your life, throwing yourself in the deep end of, you know, the emotional pool, and really like hunkering down and like, you know, I got up every night like your mom did and performed at some shitty little club, you know, whether it was, you know, Rusty's Bagel on La Brea and with 10 people in the audience, or whether I went on at 1 o'clock in the morning at the Comedy Store in Westwood and, you know, sat around for 2 hours waiting to get on at the Improv. You know, you just did it, and that's what you did. And then I got up and I had a day job, and you know what? It was like, that's how you got to do it when you're 18, 20, 25. And if it's meant to be, it'll happen.